Man.
Hey, howdy, hey, theology nerds. Is that our intro?
No. We went through this the other day. That down good theology, remember?
That down good. What was it?
That was Church's Chicken.
Oh, that down. Was it the down south theology?
That, I don't. Oh, is it? I'm gonna look it up because
Oh, bring in that down home flavor.
bringing that down home theology.
Bonsai Theology. Bringing that down home theology. Brought to you by Church's Chicken.
As if we would get sponsored by Cane's first. Accept
Yeah.
sponsorship by Cane's first.
Yeah.
You know, we want that Christian chicken, none of that Chick-fil-A or Church's. I don't know, it tastes better.
You think it tastes better than Chick-fil-A?
Heck yeah.
Oof, I'm about to disappoint you. I'm not gonna say Chick-fil-A is the best chicken in the world. Because actually, here's my opinion. Longhorn's chicken tenders, by far the best chicken
Oh gosh. No!
I'm not even kidding you. I'm not
We
even
go
kidding
to
you.
a steak place and get chicken tenders.
I'm not even kidding you. They are the
Oh.
best chicken tenders you will ever have. But Cane's, listen, Cane's, their whole menu is just full of chicken tenders, and they're not even the best chicken tenders.
But when mixed with the sauce, my
Even
gosh.
then, the sauce, you get this like a little round thing. It's like this deep, and you have to pay for extra.
Triple that.
Yeah. And you have to pay for extra.
Oh, but it's delicious and open on Sundays.
It is open on Sundays, I'll give you that.
Yeah. And what good ministry is closed on Sundays?
I said,
Tell me that.
How Christian can you be if you're not closed on Sundays?
Dude,
obviously that's the
every
day
church I've worked at is open on Sundays.
Well, I should tell you something.
I say that like it's a ton. I've only worked at like 3. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us today for this episode of Bonsai Theology. We are finishing up Ecclesiastes today, the first of our wisdom literature podcasts.
Yes.
And thank you guys for joining us so far. So we recorded this series ahead of time, and so I'm actually really excited. Tomorrow is the official launch of Bonsai Theology, and I mean, as we're recording this.
Let's give ourselves a high five.
Yeah.
All right.
Wow, that was terrible. We both high-fived the wrong side of the screen.
Fix it in post.
Okay. But yeah, so we're so excited to see what ends up happening with this. As Nathan said in our ad, we're hoping that this will last for a while, few months, years, centuries, till we're done with Oxford. Yeah.
Sure.
Anyways,
oh man.
Yeah. So this is the last episode of our Ecclesiastes series.
Yeah, and it might be a short one, but it's one I'm excited about.
Yeah. I just realized I didn't have my Bible ready, so.
Oh, shame. Actually, I didn't either.
Wow, we are so prepared.
Wow. We wing these things, let's be honest.
Oh, yeah. Totally. By the fact that we're able to read the show notes that are almost word for word what we go over. Wing it.
What do you mean almost word for word? It is word for word.
Oh, man.
Listen, I can barely talk as it is. I need all the help I can get.
Oh, what a lie. That voice crack, holy.
Oh, how old are you?
12?
You 12? Yes, all that to say, this might be a shorter episode.
All right, so with all that being said, today's episode is titled Ecclesiastes in Conversation. So what did you mean by that, Nathan?
In conversation with what, you ask? Oh, you just asked. You literally just asked. Okay. Wow, I was not expecting you to ask.
Oh, man.
Yes, great question. when I type Ecclesiastes in conversation, I mean, today we're going to look at how Ecclesiastes has some similarities or some affinities, you might say, with some comedic plays of ancient Greece. Right, that's pretty exciting. Ecclesiastes, people view as dark and nihilistic, and then comedy. They don't seem to go hand in hand, but I'm going to show you they do. That Ecclesiastes is in conversation with the comedians of ancient Greece. That's what I mean. Thank you for your
And
question.
2022 Gen Zers.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't think nihilism is funny, you're not on TikTok.
You're not on, true.
I'm not on TikTok.
I'm not on TikTok.
Yeah.
So neither of us are on TikTok, and you said that joke. So
I think nihilism is funny, though.
that's true. All right. So yeah, I guess we can just get into it.
All right. This is going to be a chaotic episode. I feel like I say that every time.
Yes, it's going to be chaotic. This episode is going to have a lot of reading because I'm going to read out of Ecclesiastes, and then I'm going to read some snippets of ancient Greek comedy plays.
Ooh.
But I think it is very enlightening, and I should say this at the start. I owe a lot of this of what I learned about this to. It's going to be Bema podcast style with his love for Rabbi David Foreman.
Oh, yeah.
This episode is sponsored by John Jarek in the book Reading Ecclesiastes Intertextually.
It is not sponsored, but you can buy the book with our link
Yeah.
in the description.
Because he talked about what we're talking about today, and it's a really interesting thing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, as I kind of said, it might sound odd to think of Ecclesiastes as being, and sort of a conversation with comedians and with like the comedy plays of ancient Greece, and that's because Ecclesiastes, or I guess we've been calling it by the author Kohelet, or the speaker, I should say, maybe not the author, we don't know, Kohelet. It's thought to be this great sage of pessimism, of nihilism, of skepticism, of cynicism, and we find that in verses like everything is absurd, or everything is vapor, or breath, or futile, or vanity, or mirage, or something like it's all chasing the wind, or shepherding the wind, or shepherding desire.
Herding cats.
Right? And so that, wait, what?
Herding cats.
Herding cat. Yes, it's the same. It's the same concept. It's not worth doing. But anything like the message of Kohelet, anything that could be considered good or considered valuable is ultimately trumped by death. Meaning, like, you can't take money into the grave, you can't take food, you can't take drink with you into the grave, and you can't even take wisdom with you into the grave, which actually is much to the distress of Kohelet, because he mourns and laments that the same fate that awaits the wise one. Oh wait, wow, what am I trying to say? Kohelet mourns and laments that the fate that awaits the foolish one is the same fate that awaits the wise one, and ultimately that's just death. They both die off, and you can see that in like Ecclesiastes 2:15 when he says, "The fate of the fool will overtake me also. Why then have I become wise?" And so just like the fool, the wise will also be quickly forgotten after death. And then Kohelet declares his hatred for death, ironically due to the unfairness. The hatred of life, sorry. Ironically due to the unfairness of death, because wisdom deserves better, right? And so that doesn't sound like it has the makings of a comedy to me. And so I think this concept of Hebel and Ruach, while very prominent in Ecclesiastes, I think in a way it's kind of forced the reader to corner Kohelet into this stereotype of being a prophet of doom and gloom. And we might say that Kohelet is then better thought of as being in conversation with ancient Greek tragedians, which makes for another cool study, and is actually a study that, once again, the scholar John Jarek has done. But that's not something that I'll get into today. Maybe down the road we can do a blog post on it or something. But I think we must take into consideration that comedy was made to be the dramatic companion to tragedy, in the sense that comedy enacts the same themes and the same literary techniques as tragedies. And so viewed through this lens, then, I don't think it's so far-fetched to believe that Kohelet has some affinities with ancient Greek comedy. Ecclesiastes 9:11 says, "The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all." And so this whole concept of like unfortunate changes of events, I think ultimately that's the makings of a good comedy.
And as a side tangent that I'm editing out, when in Stranger Than Fiction, it talks about the difference between a tragedy and a comedy being if you die or if you get hitched.
Mm,
Like those are the only differences.
yeah,
And
great
that
movie.
actually did fit in. It is a great
Yeah,
movie.
it did fit
I
in.
watch it.
You
I
should watch it.
think it's PG-13, mostly appropriate. I don't remember
Yeah,
anything inappropriate.
I haven't seen it in a long time. I remember it being a good movie though.
Yeah.
Watch it. Your mind will be blown. Will Ferrell is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, it is.
All right.
Anyways,
Yeah. So the first comedy writer that I want to compare to Ecclesiastes is a Greek playwright known by the name Menander. At least I think that's how it's pronounced. I could be sounding really dumb right now, but as far as I know, it's pronounced Menander, who was a playwright in Athens, and he was the preeminent writer for what's known or in the area of comedy that's known as New Comedy, which were just comedies written between like the fourth and the third centuries BCE. And he probably would have been born like 340s BCE, died around the 290s BCE. And his stories, while still under the umbrella of new comedy, and he was still a comedy playwright, his stories were on the darker side and featured themes such as rape or prostitution or seduction, which may not be things you think of when you think of comedies, but nonetheless, he was still like the preeminent writer of new comedy.
yeah. And that's something we do see a lot in modern comedy. Like, I mean, there are so many comedians that, or heck, even like Rick and Morty or
Yeah,
BoJack Horseman, those types of things where the jokes are in how depressing and nihilistic it is or how wrong it is. And there are so many comedians that, like, that's what they are. It's the shock value
yeah,
of the joke. Not that these comedies were the same as jokes, but
but still a darker side of comedy.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just a little background information on Menander. Now we're going to get into the good stuff and start comparing some verses in Ecclesiastes with some lines from plays Menander would have written. And so the first is Ecclesiastes 9:11 through 12, which I just read 9:11, but I'll read it again just for the sake of context of verse 12. And that says, "I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise or wealth to the brilliant or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to them all. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, so people are trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them." And so we take that, just once again, that the whole theme of like time, chance, fate, not knowing when things are going to happen, no one knowing when their hour is going to come. We find a play by Menander titled The Shield, in which he actually takes lines from ancient tragedians, from tragedy plays, but he uses them in like a comic pastiche kind of way. And so we have a line such as, "There is no man who is happy in all things," or a line of, "It's chance, not prudence, that rules the fate of men," or disasters strike us unforeseen, so the gods ordain. And so just the whole theme of fate, chance, not knowing when things are going to happen. There's no man who is happy in all things. I think that kind of echoes like the Hevel type aspect of Kohelet. So there's some affinities there. Ecclesiastes 1:2 or 2:17, which is the famous "everything is meaningless, everything is absurd, everything is vanity," and a play titled "Girl Pipers." Menander writes, "Chance destroys all logic and runs counter to our expectations, planning other outcomes. Chance makes other efforts futile." And I think it's really cool because that word futile is also used in Ecclesiastes or as a translation for Hevel. And I think if you look, I could be wrong, but I think if I remember correctly, if you look at the Septuagint Ecclesiastes, I think those words line up because Menander would have been written or would have written in Greek.
Mm.
So there are some more similarities there. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. Let me turn there real fast and read that. The two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up, but pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. And so, in a play titled The Bad Tempered Man, after the character was pulled from a well he had fallen into, he said, "One mistake perhaps I did make, thought myself alone of all, self sufficient, never needing anything from anyone. And now I see that death may strike one swift and unpredictable. So I found how wrong I was then. Surely one must always have someone near to help." I think those are some strong similarities between that verse in Ecclesiastes and that passage from Menander.
Oh, yeah.
Switching over to, or turning over to Ecclesiastes chapter 11, verses 1-2. Let me get there real fast. It says, 1-2, 11, 1-2. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. Invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. And so rabbinic tradition, they take these verses as like stating the importance of circulating one's wealth to ensure charitable giving when one falls in hard times. So keep that in the back of your mind. Here's a passage from, once again, The Bad Tempered Man, from Menander, which says, "You talk of wealth, a thing on which you can't rely, for if you know that it will stay with you forever, keep it then. Don't give a share to anyone. But where you're not the master and hold it not by right, but by the gift of fortune, Father, don't begrudge a share of this to anyone. For fortune may take all from you and hand it on perhaps to someone less deserving than you. And so I say that all the time you have it, Father, you should use it generously to help all men through your means, enrich as many as you can. And such deeds will live. And if you chance to fall yourself sometime, you will receive a fair return from them. Far better, Father, is a friend you see than hidden treasure buried underground," which I just think is fantastic. And once again, lines up pretty well with the theme in that verse of Ecclesiastes of sharing your wealth, not only to help others, but because if you yourself fall on hard times, those you were generous with will have a greater propensity to be generous back to you.
Oh, yeah. And what good is money going to do for you in the grave? What?
Oh,
Who is it
yeah.
that made that song? He's the richest man in the cemetery, but he never really did raise a family.
Oh, is that
I want to say it's Coin.
Coin?
Yeah,
Yeah, Coin.
cemetery.
Yeah.
It's accurate if you put all your time into making the money and not investing in others. It doesn't even have to be a family, like a atomic family, but just in family people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I knew the song. I didn't know what the lyric was until just now when you said it, and I'm really glad you brought it back. That fit really well.
Yeah. Oh man. Fun fact: Nathan and I had tickets to see Coin, and then COVID canceled that show.
Yes, man.
Yeah.
Maybe one of these days. Maybe one of these days.
Maybe one of them.
Maybe when we're rich off of this podcast, but not too rich because we're going to share our wealth.
Yes.
Get some more tickets.
With Coin.
With
Oh,
Coin.
I mean with.
Yes, that was a really good lyric. I'm really glad or happy you brought that up. Yes, and once again, I know it's a lot of reading, but I think it is really cool to see these similarities between Ecclesiastes and ancient Greek comedies because it's just a new way of viewing Ecclesiastes that I don't think people typically think of. Like, Ecclesiastes and comedy. You don't think of it. But the last verse I want to read and compare with Menander before moving on is Ecclesiastes 5:12. So let me hop on over to that real fast. And that says, "The sleep of the laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much. But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep." And so you get this idea that I guess the quote unquote a poor man will rest easier than a rich man. which I don't know if Menander would agree with that completely, but he does, as like he takes the part as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. He does take that idea and he has a conversation, a little discourse that helps unpack that a little more. And this is from a play called The Lyre Player, and like not Liar, but Lyer, the instrument, the lyre player. Says, rich people who never need to raise a loan. I used to think their nights weren't fraught with sighs, tossing up and down and cries of deep distress. I thought their sleep was sweet and gentle. This, though, and the this that he's talking about is the nights being fraught with sighs, tossing up and down, and cries of deep distress. This, though, I believe to be a private misery of the poor. But now I see that so-called knobs as rich as you have troubles just like us. And so can pain and life be brothers? Pain may haunt a life of luxury, sit by a life of fame, and grow old inside a life of need. No man on earth has lived without some pain.
Mm.
Yes. And I think, once again, that lines up pretty well with the theme of that verse in Ecclesiastes, which is really cool to see.
So specifically that verse in Ecclesiastes, so I think I'm reading a different version than you, but
yes, I forgot to say I brought in the wrong Bible and I didn't want to go up and get it and waste some time. I am reading out of the NIV again today.
NIV, very nice. But sweet is the sleep of laborers, whether they eat little or much. But the surfeit of the rich will not let them sleep. Which how was it worded in yours?
But as for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep.
Yeah. So instantly, what was coming to mind is there's an interview of Elon Musk that got really big, where he was talking about where he sleeps in the different factories that he runs, and how there's a area in the Tesla Motors company that he sleeps every time that he visits, and it's
really
just because like he's constantly traveling, and there is very little rest for that level of rich because everything is about hustle culture and the grind, as Bitcoiners would say,
as Instagram influencers will tell you.
Yeah, but that idea is very accurate. Like, it's hard to. Okay, I say it's very accurate. From what I know of that culture, it's very accurate.
You're not a billionaire?
No, my net worth has never been with that many zeros.
My net worth is what, $10? I don't.
Yeah, I think the amount of student loans I have probably have knocked it to being a lower net worth.
I mean, my net worth is in the negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Capitalism.
Gotta love it. Or do you? I think we talked about capitalism a little bit in one of our episodes, I want to say.
We did.
So refer back to that episode. Go back and listen to it.
Go back and listen to episode 2, which I think is where we talked about it.
I think that was it. Yeah, that was
listen
it.
To episode 3 too.
Listen to all of the episodes.
Yeah, just
again
just
and
as a
again.
refresher.
Just be obsessive about it.
Please.
Yes. Yeah. So those were some similarities between Ecclesiastes and the Greek playwright Menander. And I want to move on to the next Greek playwright named Aristophanes, who was the great playwright of the era of comedy known as Old Comedy, so before Menander. And these were comedies written around the 5th century BCE in Athens. And he was around the time of a rough date of 445 to 375 BCE. And he wrote plays that attacked like heads of states and that attacked the destructiveness and the stupidity of war. And so very hot button issues of the time. He did not pull his punches in his plays. But yeah, now I want to talk about some similarities between Aristophanes and the book of Ecclesiastes. But first off, so in Aristophanes, a repeated comic device that we see him using is him taking someone who in no way belongs to like the assembly of Athenian citizens or like the ecclesia or ecclesia, and he writes them as the protagonists engaging in deliberations in the ecclesia. In other words, he is moving up like the quote unquote less desirable citizens up in status to the ecclesia. And we see that in plays such as Clouds. And this quote is on being delighted in partaking in the ecclesia. He says, my soul has taken flight at the sound of their voice and now seeks to split hairs, prattle narrowly about smoke, and meet arguments with counter-argument, puncturing a point with a pointlet. And Wasps, the same idea. He writes, just as I was nodding off, I dreamed that the sheep were meeting in the assembly on the Pinks, which is just where it was like the location of the assembly, wearing cheap jackets and carrying walking sticks. And then in a play called The Assembly Woman, which that's an entire play in which the women of the city rise up in ranks and they reign over its governance, or they govern the city. So back in that time, quote unquote, someone less than desirable, moving up in rank into a higher position in the assembly or the ecclesia. And so in Ecclesiastes, then, we find that the author, or Kohelet, takes a king and morphs him into an assemblyman, which Kohelet means like teacher of the assembly, or like one who teaches the public. And so this technically would have been a step down from king to assembly, but nonetheless, the concept remains the same of someone outside of the assembly being brought into the assembly as one who partakes in the assembly. So that's one similarity between Ecclesiastes and Aristophanes. Now I'm going to read some verses again, like I did with Menander, and then read some excerpts from the play. And as you can tell from my show notes, I got really tired of typing word for word the excerpts from a play. So I'm just going I don't know why I closed my Bible, because I still need my Bible. So I'm just going to read it from the book I have from the plays itself. But let me get to Ecclesiastes real fast.
All right. And if you want, I can read the Ecclesiastes and you can read the section from the play.
Oh, yeah. Sweet. Yeah.
Cool. Because I've got that open right in front of me. So Ecclesiastes 10:8, while he's finding the play, says, whoever digs a pit will fall into it, and whoever breaks through a wall will be bitten by a snake. So remember, don't break through walls.
And don't be bitten by snakes.
Yep. Ignore Jim Morrison. Do not break through to the other side.
Do not break through the other side. Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
So Aristophanes, then, he takes this idea of like mishaps occurring in situations like that, and he actually relishes in that. He loves that. And so he writes in a play called, once again, my pronunciation will be very important probably, but our Acarnians, something like that. May I yet see him hungry for a squid, and may it lie grilled and sizzling by the shore, and make port safely at his table. And then, when he's about to grab it, may a dog snap it up and run away with it. And that's one curse for him. And here's another to happen to him in the night. As he walks home shivering after galloping his horse, I hope some drunkard, mad Orestes, knocks him on the head, and when he wants to grab a stone, I hope in the darkness he grabs in his hand a fresh shat turd, and holding that glittering missile, let him charge at his foe, then miss him and hit Cretinius. There we go.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. I didn't write it, but thank you.
You read it, and that matters.
Thank you. The next verse that I have up there is chapter 8, verse 15, which is just like the recommendation of Kohelet, of him recommending to enjoy the simple pleasures of eating and drinking. So if you wanted to read that one real fast.
Yeah, it says, so I commend enjoyment, for there is nothing better for people under the sun than to eat and drink and enjoy themselves. For this will go with them in their toil through the days of the life that God gives them under the sun.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so there's a character just called the chorus leader in the same play that I just read, the Acarnians. And he refers to this formula again of just enjoying just the simple things in life. And he says, the more I kept inviting him to drink and recline and take this cup of fellowship, the more he kept setting our vine props afire and violently spilling the wine from our vines. And so just the idea of drinking, reclining, and taking the cup of fellowship, enjoying the simple things in life. Now there's another play, and this one's just a little bit more crass, but it still gets the point. In a play called Peace, the character, he has the character saying, here comes the song of Datis, I think, which once upon a time he used to sing while masturbating of an afternoon. How happy, how pleasured, how bubbly I feel. A little crass, but nonetheless, it's that theme of just enjoying the simple pleasures because there's just nothing better for man to do but to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. So,
I was not ready for that.
I
Wow.
didn't have it in the show notes. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I think that I may have done one of those movements when you said it.
Yes. So yes, there's that one. If you wanted to read Ecclesiastes 1:7.
Yeah. 1:7 says, all streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they continue to flow.
Yes, thank you. And so we find an echo of this in a play called Clouds when Aristophanes writes, if the sea grows no bigger, even though rivers flow into it, where do you get off looking to make your money grow bigger?
Mm.
Yeah, so that theme again. Very similar, I think.
Indeed. And then Ecclesiastes 4:4 says, then I saw that all toil and all skill and work come from one person's envy of another. That also is vanity and chasing after the wind.
Yes. And then in a play called Wealth, we find another echo or something else that matches this opinion when he writes, there's no trace of goodness in anyone. The lust for profit rules the world. And yes, it's coming back to me now. I believe we did. No, that was episode 3. We talked about that, I think. That was episode 3.
I
think
believe
when we
so.
talked about that. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we actually unpacked that verse, I think, a little bit in episode 3. So if you wanted to go back and listen to that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Ecclesiastes 5:11 says, when goods increase, those who eat them increase. And what gain has their owner but to see them with his eyes?
Yes. And so once again, from the play called Wealth, we have another echo or similarity in when Aristophanes writes, friends are trouble if they're the sort who suddenly materialize when you're successful. So another great line, I think.
Yeah. And then now I've got a lot to read. Ooh.
Yeah, this is your moment.
So Ecclesiastes 7:15 says, in my vain life I have seen everything. There are righteous people who perish in their righteousness, and there are wicked people who prolong their life in their evil doing. Ecclesiastes 8:14 says, there's a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people who are treated according to the conduct of the wicked, and there are wicked people who are treated according to the conduct of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. And then 9 verse 1 says, all this I laid to heart, examining it all, how the righteous and the wise and their deeds are in the hand of God. Whether it is love or hate, one does not know. Everything that confronts them is vanity.
Yes. So this whole concept of Kohelet complaining about the divine giving to the wicked rewards that should go to the righteous, and the righteous getting what should go to the wicked, right? So that complaint, we find another echo once again in the play called Wealth, which is a great play. I think anyone should read it. But he writes, just consider the current state of our human existence. Who wouldn't think it's madness or even divine malevolence? It's a fact that many people are wealthy despite being scoundrels who've amassed it unjustly, while a good many worthy people fare badly and go hungry and spend most of their time in your company. So once again, I think those themes and those writings line up quite well, almost eerily well. So that's kind of the end of the comparisons. Aristophanes and Menander are like the two foremost comedic writers of the ancient Greek world. But I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that the author of Ecclesiastes that they were like a comedic playwright for the Athenian theater. But I think these similarities can change the way that we view like when he writes words of pleasure found in 12:10. I think they can add a little nuance to that pleasure there. But overall, in doing this exercise or just and reading these similarities, I really want to get across that it's important not to stuff Ecclesiastes into a box. Because if there's just one book of the Bible that goes against the grain of what we want it to do, that's going to be the book of Ecclesiastes.
Oh yeah.
Right. So that's really the big takeaway is just don't try to stuff Ecclesiastes into a box because it's just going to break out of it and just defy all of our expectations. But also, even in the midst of pessimism or nihilism or skepticism or cynicism, and I actually don't really believe Kohelet to be all that nihilistic. It sounds it, but I don't think he's really all that nihilistic. But maybe Kohelet is just trying to say that life is so absurd that the happenings of life scrape against like the foundations of logic so greatly that it's almost comedic. Right. And I think maybe that could be a good way to view that or to phrase that.
Oh yeah.
And if Proverbs is supposedly the book that shows how Yahweh's embedded moral order is supposed to play out in the real world, Ecclesiastes is the opposite and kind of says, yeah, this is what life should be. This is what you're reading in life. This is how it should go, but it's not like that. It's all an affront to logic. It's all an affront to reason. It's all hevel, and it's kind of funny.
Wow, it just tied all together.
Yeah.
It's all heaven. And that's a beautiful way to put it. The comparison of Proverbs to Ecclesiastes, what life should be, and then what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's something that happens all too often is that we get into this comparison of this is exactly what life is supposed to be like. And if it's not lining up with that, then, well, we're looking at it wrong. Yeah. And that's not how you're supposed to interpret scripture of that, you know? I lost where I was saying in there, so I might.
No, I like that. I like that. But yeah, I know everyone says Ecclesiastes is just the voice of someone who just hates life, has this terrible outlook on what life is. But I think overall, I mean, once you read it all the way through, I think you can come to the conclusion that the author of Ecclesiastes does appreciate life just for its little things. Because in the end, that's what matters. I mean, you can't take wealth with you, like we said. You can't take food. You can't take excess to the grave with you. Yeah. So just enjoy what you have,
Yeah, for sure.
And just lay back and just laugh at the absurdities of life. I don't know.
Live, laugh, and love.
Live, laugh, and love. Oh my land! You just redeemed that saying in that phrase. You just redeemed that phrase.
Oh gosh!
All right, if there's one takeaway from Ecclesiastes, it's live, laugh, love.
Oh no! Your kitchen is accurate.
I know this series on Ecclesiastes seemed kind of sporadic, but you know what? I don't care because I like what we talked about.
Yeah, I think it was good.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this episode, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Nathan, for hosting that and everything. And man, I'm excited to get into our next episode in the series.
Our next, I think we're sticking with the wisdom literature for a while, right?
Yep.
I think before we get into like the next series, which I think is Job, right? We're gonna jump.
Yeah, I believe it is Job.
We're just gonna do a little episode that we're gonna find fun, but I'm not gonna tell you what it is yet.
Yeah, because we need to get stuff hammered out and scheduled.
Yes.
But yeah,
so we're gonna have one episode after this that's not tied to the wisdom literature, I guess per se. It might be. I don't. Well, I just meant like with wisdom literature in general. I don't know if what we're going to talk about has any bearing on the wisdom literature, but
we'll see.
We're going to have that episode, and then we're going to go into Job.
Yeah. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe on whatever platform you're in. The show notes will be in the description on YouTube, or if you go to our website, Bonsai Theology, then you can find it in the show notes of the podcast posted there. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. And if you have any questions or comments, then you can write to us at contact@Bonsai Theology. And I think that covers the basis.
That's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, have a good one, everyone, and rest well.
See you around.
Yeah. Bye.
Love. Bye.